Unless it's Austin, so it's a little different.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Okay, so the show I'm pitching today is Macbeth, which I guess it's okay to say that because this isn't a theater, so we're not going to have the ceiling tiles fall down on us. And before I start, I just wanted to talk a little bit about who I am. My name is Kathleen. I am a director, performer, and producer here in Houston. I've worked professionally with 80 Players Theater and with Encore Arts in Katy and the Zach in Austin, the Butler School of Music in Austin, and a little bit of Main Street Theater, just down the street. Last year I co-founded Artists AF, AF standing for All Female, and it is a collective that is dedicated to producing work created by women, hence the name Artists All Female. And I co-founded that last year with some of my friends, and we produced like a 10-minute play festival and a solo performance festival and a couple of like online pieces, like music videos and stuff. So I do that. I'm from Houston. I work down the street at the Museum of Fine Arts in their fundraising office. And I went to UT and got my degree in theater and dance there, but mostly theater. I took one dance class, and it ended up on my degree anyway. I would say my approach as a director, I'm highly collaborative. I want to make sure that everybody has ownership over the production, feels like, from me to all the actors to all the crew members to everybody feels like it is their show. It's not my show. It's not any one person's show. I think my job is mainly to focus on the narrative and the story and do everything for the narrative and let everybody else kind of, create their own little pieces so they could all come together and make a well-rounded show. I also feel like the audience is one of the most important characters, and that I have to serve as the representative of the audience in the rehearsal room, which is why directors tend to leave after opening night, because the character is there and we're not needed anymore. I also find pacing to be really important. That's a lot of what I focus on, is the pacing of the scenes, and I like finding humor wherever I can, even though it's a little bit more difficult in a piece like Macbeth when everybody gets murdered brutally on stage and you don't want to laugh at that, hopefully. Okay, so my take on the show, it's one of my favorite Shakespeare plays. Sometimes it's Romeo and Juliet, depending on how I'm feeling that day. I think that Macbeth is all about survival of the fittest. A lot of people, some people say it's a play about ambition, some people say it's a play about gender, because there's a lot of very gendered terms used in it. But the take that I find most intriguing is that all the characters are they're all just trying to survive, and they're doing whatever they can to survive, which is why they make such extreme choices. An interesting thread that's not often explored that I like to think about is that the Macbeths have lost a child. Lady Macbeth talks in the beginning about how she's given birth and how she's, has memories of a child, but there's no child that belongs to the Macbeths in the story. And that's why I think they're so desperate to fulfill the prophecy and become the king and queen, and then keep it that way, because that's going to define what their legacy is, since they don't necessarily have a legacy of a child that they've left behind. I really like how the characters all give in to their raw animalistic natures, and I'd really like to explore unfiltered emotions like fear and pain, anger and hatred, and just get into all that juicy stuff. And then just questions I was thinking about as reading during the piece is, do the actions of the characters cause the prophecy to come true, the prophecy made by the witches at the beginning, or was it always going to happen, and have the actions sped it up, have the actions made it more violent? Maybe Macbeth was going to become the king, but it was going to be a peaceful transition in 20 years, but because he decided to kill Duncan, he caused all these horrible things to happen. So just thinking about, are the characters thinking about that after they make those choices? And then just kind of broadly, how are your choices affected when your only goal in life is to survive and to get to the next day? I came up with a whole separate concept for Macbeth set in the TV show Survivor, and it actually worked really well. I won't present that right now. This is my concept image. It is a rotting cantaloupe. I like to call this version of Macbeth survival in a decaying society, and I just really loved how there were these like bright colors juxtaposed with like, you know, it's like bright and orange and vivid, but it's also like dying and disgusting. So that, I kind of love that. Also, it looks like a rotting zombie mouth. All the people in Starbucks thought it was weird because I kept looking at like pictures of rotten fruit, but I like it. So my idea for setting the show is kind of like what would happen if nobody had evacuated from Chernobyl after the big like nuclear incident there. Kind of a society where like everybody's trapped, like no one can leave and nobody comes in, and everything is like slowly succumbing to, you know, radioactivity. So those are just some like concept images that I liked thinking about, like the whole world of the play. One of them is actually from Chernobyl. Like there are all these wonderful pictures of like half melted baby dolls and abandoned nurseries, and it's really creepy. And I think very fitting. So then to go into more details, as far as costumes and makeup, like when I create budgets for shows, a lot of the money goes towards costumes and makeup, because at the end of the day, like the audience is watching the people on stage, and so like we should invest in what the people look like and what the characters look like. I think costuming for this show should be very bright and vivid and have lots of like sharp lines, and that the makeup should show like subtle signs of decay, like everybody's rotting from the inside out. So like, you know, not like I have a zombie face, but like, you know, somebody turns their head and they have like a little trickle of like blood coming out of their ear, or like their teeth are black, or like, you know, one of their eyes is crusty, you know, just kind of like little gross things, or like one side, you know, you look at them from one side and they look normal, and you look at them from the other side and you're like, what is wrong with that person? Just, you know, little like juicy hints to give to the audience, like what's going on with these people. So this is my costume concept for the witches. I couldn't find a lot of what I liked. This is like my favorite thing. It's like a Barbie doll, but it's like half painted to look like the skin has been peeled off. That's what I liked the bright. There's like a sweatshirt that has like a rib cage, and like you can see like the internal organs, and then like this shirt is cut to look like a rib cage. So kind of like this half, like, you know, they're like peeling back the layers and you see like the thing underneath, but it's all like neon. And I was really into the pop art zombies, but I don't want to go as crazy as what that picture is. It's just really cool. For the lords and the kings and queens and royalty of the show, I really liked these really bold, bright suits that are very color blocked and strong. And I think it would just be easier if everybody's in something like this to like do all the combat sequences, because if you know, everyone's in like long flowy robes and you're like sword fighting, like that's miserable and nobody wants to do that. So, and you know, it's kind of going with the idea that there are these like bright flashes of light that are then gonna be put out at the end of the show when everybody dies. And then this was my idea for like the soldiers and the murderers. It's what hunters wear is, you know, this kind of mix of like camo, and then they have to have the bright like safety vests. In this is called blaze orange. There's like blaze pink and blaze green also, but just kind of weird, like you're half hidden but you can't actually hide because you're wearing like a bright orange vest, and which is good, because if you're a hunter, you don't want somebody to accidentally mistake you for a deer. But I just like that look a lot. And that's what I was thinking of for makeup, but like less than this, but like, you know, diseased veins and rotting skin and nasty stuff like that. For the set, I really like thrust stages. I'd have to look a little bit more closely at what the commons look like, because I haven't seen them before. You can. That's like my favorite way to stage things. and just with like simple furniture pieces like brought on and off quickly, and like everything moves very quickly. I don't want there to be like, you know, a solid built set, because there's no real sense of like space or time. Everybody kind of appears and disappears quickly, which goes along with the theme of the show of, you know, bright flashes of life and then it's ended, and it's kind of depressing, but it's Macbeth, so. And I want all the furniture and props in comparison to like the bright costumes to look like weathered and eaten away like by the environment, just to contrast that a little bit. And I really like using like the ensemble to create the ambiance of the space. And I don't know how exactly I would want to do that. Maybe, you know, in the forest scenes, having the witches there and, you know, making weird forest noises and being like spirits going in and out of like the audience, and just kind of creating like a world where the audience feels like they're involved with what's happening on stage. And those are the images I pulled for the set, just kind of furniture that's been torn apart. This was somebody's like abandoned apartment. I don't want an ostrich, but I liked the picture of the ostrich. And then for lighting and sound, I also think the lights should be, I don't know that harsh is the right word, but very like extreme, and create extreme lines, kind of like the costumes do. And I'd like actors to use handheld light sources like flashlights and things at times, you know, to do like the spooky ghost story where you hold a flashlight under your face, and when you're out in the woods, you know, looking around for murderers. I've also thought about using a black light or like a handheld black light to do some sort of supernatural effects, but I'd have to think about that more. I just like the idea. And then as far as sound goes, I want to explore ways to make people uncomfortable using sound instead of using like really like gory, bloody, graphic violence, because I feel like audiences today are very like desensitized to blood and gore, especially with shows like Game of Thrones. And I think it would be interesting to use like, you know, sounds like silverware like scraping against a plate, or like that horrible like emergency alert sound you get on your phone sometimes, to kind of make people cringe and feel uncomfortable that way. And you kind of like the way that, you know, sounds, annoying, horrible sounds work is like you can't not pay attention to that. So I think it'll be, you know, easier to keep people like continually tuning in to like what's happening on stage. Is like if you hear like a horrible noise and you're like, oh, okay, that brought me back into it. I want to see where that came from, so I don't have to hear it anymore. So that, I don't know, I like that idea, using that. And also, if we use sound to make people uncomfortable instead of blood, there's less blood to clean up at the end of the day.
That is right.
That's
I was going to ask you that, but you answered it.
Yeah. I've done shows with, I had to do like a surgery, like when I was in a show where I had to do a surgery on stage, and like I just had a bucket of like blood made out of laundry detergent, and all I did was like put it like all over my body, and then it was just horrible because I'd have to wash it off backstage, and then we'd have to like wash the costumes like every single night, and like it's no fun.
No.
Like you want, like it is fun because it's blood and it's cool, but at the same time it's like
A lot
also,
to clean up.
Yeah, and like in like this like building, you don't want to get anything over the nice wooden floor and stain anything. So. Oh no, my battery's running low. It's okay, I'm almost done. And those are the images I had for lights. Those are paintings, but I like the work of the old Dutch masters and how everything's kind of stark and coming out of the darkness. That's somebody with a flashlight, like looking creepy. That's more of like the color scheme that I liked, with like the bright colors, but like the singular light sources. And that's at the Museum of Natural Science. But it's kind of the idea I was looking at. And then now to the more nitty-gritty details. I practice color conscious and gender conscious casting. I don't want to re-gender any of the characters. I'd rather just give actors a chance to explore how their gender expression interacts with the characters, and you know, make it more about like the individual and this take on the story is not about, you know, be a man, be a woman. That's somebody else's take. I'm just out for survival. And then I have a scheme to like double roles to create a tighter ensemble feel. That of course would depend on the people who auditioned. Right now I think I have it to where I would only need 15 actors, which is just a good solid number to have in a cast, I think. And then I want like witches to double up and play minor roles, but only when Macbeth or Banquo are on stage, because I don't want it to look like the witches are the ones who are controlling the play, because they're not. They're more like figments of like Macbeth's imagination that he's using to push the narrative forward. Because if it's like, you know, if a prophecy is made and like everything about it comes true and the witches are there like pushing it along, I don't think it's very interesting, because it's like they're the, you know, it's like, well, no, we know it's going to happen because the witches are the ones making it all happen. There's no like sense of like chance, or like, is this really going to happen? Is this guy really going to kill this guy? Even though it does all come true in the end. And then I want characters who get murdered early on to come back in key scenes, as kind of like half ghost, half like normal people characters. So like, you know, the characters on stage wouldn't necessarily recognize that like Duncan is back to play a servant, but the audience does recognize it because it is that actor who was murdered and who might still have like remnants of like, his throat was cut, so he might still have remnants of like blood on his neck or something. So the audience can kind of see like that the spirit world is interacting with the world of the living constantly. I have currently, my budget is at like $1,600. Obviously like room for improvement and moving stuff around. I do have a lot of contacts in like the area. Like I know the costume shop manager at 80 Players, and I think I could convince quite a few people to give me deals on rentals or let me rent things for free, since this is like a university production.
That would be great.
So I think I can get it down. I did a show with 16 actors and my budget was $400, and I did it in $400 and they all had multiple costume changes. Like I kind of like put the most money possible on there, hopefully to like go under, because like I work in fundraising and sometimes fundraising for stuff isn't fun. And then I also definitely like put in printing costs, because I don't know what I like at UT we could print for like super cheap or for free when I did shows at UT, but like I don't know what Rice's resources are.
You do have to pay for printing.
Yeah, I was gonna say like I guessed based off of like Office Max prices, and it's always like that's the thing that always surprises me is like how much it costs to like make copies of scripts and like make copies of posters and programs and stuff. Like you get the bill and you're like, oh my god, this is $200. Like what do you mean? It's just paper. So I definitely put that in there. And then there's little side items for like blood cleanup and tech costs, because like spike tape costs a lot of money, and zip ties and the things you don't think about until tech week. And if there's any cleanup that needed to take place, like I definitely put money in there, because you know, you don't want to go home in your car like covered in nasty makeup.
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry, I'm looking for the Shakespeare.
Yeah.
version.
We're in the middle of a pitch.
I'm
If you-
so sorry.
Oh no, if you want to just sit here,
Oh, okay. Thank you.
welcome to listen.
Sorry.
Oh, did it die? Oh my god.
There's like an outlet if you want to plug in.
It's okay. Can I actually have one of those documents that I gave you?
Yeah.
Because I have mine now. There's no more pictures, so I don't need it more. Is that what I think that's all I had. I think I ended at budget. Make sure. Yep, because the last thing I had was my casting breakdown. Okay, so that's my PowerPoint.
Okay.